Good evening, my friends. The hour grows late, and the veil between worlds thins. I am Damian Tao, your guide through the forgotten corners of the East. Tonight, we journey to a place where tradition runs deeper than blood, where the living fear the dead and the dead hunger for the living. This is a story whispered in the north, where winters bite hard and old superstitions die harder. A story about what happens when you disturb the dead. Let me tell you about the Lai family. Old Man Li, they called him. A farmer in a village so remote, even the government forgot it existed. 8 people lived in that house. Old Man Li, his wife, their 2 sons, their daughters-in-law, and 2 grandchildren. 3 generations under one roof as tradition demands. The house itself was old, built by Old Man Li's grandfather during the Republic era, the kind of house where the walls remember everything. Now, you must understand something about Chinese culture, my friends. In the West, you might display photos of loved ones casually. Here, death imagery is serious business. When someone dies, their portrait is placed on the family altar. You burn incense. You offer food. You maintain respect, because the dead are watching. Always watching. Old Man Li's wife passed first. Natural causes, they said. She was 73. A good life, a peaceful death. We held the funeral according to tradition. 3 days of mourning. White funeral banners hung from the door. White being the color of death here, not black. Her portrait went up on the altar. A kind face, they said. Smiling gently in that formal way people smile for official photographs. But then, 3 months later, the eldest son Li Wei died in his sleep. Just 45 years old. Heart attack, the village doctor said. Strange, unexpected, but these things happen, yes. Life is fragile in the countryside where hospitals are far and doctors are few. They placed Li Wei's portrait beside his mother's 2 frames now, 2 pairs of eyes watching the living. Then came the eldest grandson, little Li Ming, only 12 years old. He fell from the roof while playing, broke his neck, instant death. Now the family began to whisper. 3 deaths in 6 months. This wasn't natural. This was something else. In Chinese folklore, we have a concept called Xiong Zhai, a murder house. A place where violent death has occurred, where blood has soaked into the foundation. Such places become cursed. The resentment of the dead lingers like fog, and once it starts, it doesn't stop until the house is empty. But there had been no murders here, no violence, just deaths, natural deaths, accidents. So why did the house feel different? The younger daughter-in-law, Chen Mei, was the first to say it out loud. The portraits, she whispered, their eyes follow us. You see, in traditional Chinese belief, a photograph can trap a piece of someone's soul, especially a funeral portrait. It is not just an image, it is a doorway. The family tried to ignore it. Chen Mei's husband told her she was being superstitious. But at night, when everyone was sleeping, she heard things. Footsteps in the courtyard. Slow. Deliberate. The sound of someone or something walking in circles. Then came the 4th death. Old Man Li himself. He was found in the kitchen, collapsed beside the stove. No heart attack, no injury. He simply stopped. The doctor couldn't explain it. His heart just gave up, he said, packing his bag. But his hands were shaking as he left the house. 4 portraits now lined the altar, 4 pairs of eyes, and the remaining family members' 4 living souls felt them watching every moment. Chen Mei couldn't sleep. She lay awake, staring at the ceiling, listening to her husband's breathing, waiting for the footsteps to start again. And they did. Every night, around midnight, the sound of feet shuffling across the courtyard stones. One night, Chen Mei got up. She had to see. She had to know what was making that sound. She opened the bedroom door slowly. The hallway was dark, except for the faint glow of the altar candles from the main room. The footsteps had stopped. Complete silence now. Not even the wind outside made a sound. Chen Mei walked toward the main room. Each step felt like walking through water, heavy, resistant. She reached the doorway and looked inside. The altar candles were still burning. The portraits were still there, lined up in a row. But something was wrong. She counted again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 portraits. There should only be 4. She counted again, her breath catching in her throat. 5. And then she realized the 5th portrait was her own face. She screamed. The sound shattered the silence like breaking glass. Her husband found her collapsed in the doorway, unconscious. When she woke, she couldn't speak for 3 days. But when she could finally whisper, she told them what she'd seen. Her own portrait, her own funeral photograph sitting there with the others. The family didn't believe her. Shock, they said, a nightmare. Your mind playing tricks. Chen Mei knew what she'd seen, and she knew what it meant. She would be next. Now, you must understand something else, my Western friends. In Chinese culture, there are specific taboos about death. Breaking them invites disaster. Never point at the moon, you'll anger the moon goddess. Never whistle at night, you'll call ghosts. And never, ever stick chopsticks upright in rice. Because upright chopsticks look like incense burned for the dead. It is an invitation, a dinner table set for ghosts. Chen Mei remembered something. 3 weeks ago during dinner, little Li Ming, the grandson who died, had stuck his chopsticks in his rice. His grandmother had scolded him. Don't do that. It is bad luck. But the boy had laughed. Just a game. Just playing. 2 days later, he fell from the roof. 2 days. And now Chen Mei wondered, had he invited something? Had his innocent game opened a door? She went to the village shaman. An old woman who lived alone at the edge of the village. People said she could see things. The shaman listened to Chen Mei's story. Her face remained expressionless, weathered like old wood. Then she spoke one word: hungry. The dead are hungry, the shaman explained. Simone forgot to feed them properly. The offerings were wrong. The rituals incomplete. In traditional Chinese funerary practice, you must feed the dead. Not metaphorically, actually. You place food before their portraits. Rice, meat, fruit. Because in the afterlife, what we call the yellow springs, the dead still need sustenance. If you don't feed them, they get hungry, and hungry ghosts, they take what they need. But we gave offerings, Chen Mei protested. We burned incense. We followed the traditions. The shaman shook her head. Simone cut corners. Someone showed disrespect. The dead noticed. Now they're angry. And then Chen Mei remembered. After old man Li died, his younger son, her brother-in-law, had complained about the cost of the funeral. We're wasting money on paper offerings, he'd said. Father is dead. He doesn't need spirit money. It all just burns anyway. So they bought less. Half the usual amount of spirit money. Cheaper incense. They'd cut the funeral down from 3 days to 2. Small savings, practical decisions. But to the dead, unforgivable insults. What can we do? Chen Mei begged the shaman. How do we make it right? The shaman was quiet for a long moment. Finally, you can't once the dead start taking. They don't stop until the debt is paid. 8 people lived there. 4 have died. The debt requires 4 more. Chen Mei felt her blood turn to ice water. 4 more, her husband, her sister-in-law, her brother-in-law, all of them marked. Unless, the shaman added, you leave, abandon the house. Let it become truly empty. Sometimes an empty house satisfies them. Chen Mei ran home. She told her husband everything. At first, he didn't believe. But then he saw the fear in her eyes. That night, they heard the footsteps again. But this time, they weren't outside. They were inside the house. Walking down the hallway, slow, deliberate, coming closer. The footsteps stopped outside their bedroom door. They could see the shadow beneath the door, 2 feet, standing. Waiting, Chen Mei grabbed her husband's hand. She could feel his pulse racing, matching her own hammering heartbeat. The door handle began to turn, slowly, the old metal squeaking, and then it stopped. The shadow moved away. The footsteps retreated back down the hallway. But they both knew this was a warning, a preview. Next time, the door would open. At dawn, they packed everything they could carry: clothes, documents, a little money hidden under the floorboards. They told the others, the brother and sister-in-law, to come with them, but the brother refused. "This is superstitious nonsense," he said. "I won't abandon my family home." His wife, though she wanted to leave, Chen Mei could see it in her eyes, but she wouldn't go against her husband, tradition, obedience. So Chen Mei and her husband left alone. They walked away from that house in the gray dawn light. Not looking back, they moved to a town 3 counties away, found work, tried to forget, but Chen Mei couldn't sleep. Every night, she dreamed of that house, of those portraits, of her own face staring back at her from a funeral photograph. 2 months passed. Then one morning, a messenger arrived from their village. Chen Mei knew before he spoke. She could see it in his face. The brother-in-law had died, found in the courtyard, collapsed beside the well. No explanation, no reason. And his wife, she'd vanished, simply disappeared the same night. They searched for 3 days, found nothing. 6 deaths now. The house had claimed 6 of its 8 residents. Chen Mei looked at her husband. They both knew 2 more. The debt required 2 more. But here is where the story takes a darker turn, my friends. Because distance means nothing to the dead. You cannot outrun your debts. Not to the living, and certainly not to the hungry ghosts. Chen Mei thought they were safe. 3 counties away, new names, new jobs. A fresh start in a place where no one knew them. But she should have remembered what the old people say: "Gui da qiang, go chang," ghost hitting wall. When ghosts trap you in a loop, you can run forever but never escape. Her husband found work at a textile factory. Long hours, poor pay, but honest work. He came home exhausted every night, too tired to dream. Chen Mei took a job cleaning offices at night. She preferred the darkness now. In the light, shadows were too obvious, too revealing. 3 months passed. 4, 5. Chen Mei began to breathe easier. Maybe they had escaped. Maybe the shaman was wrong. Then, one night, while cleaning the 3rd floor of an office building, she smelled something. Incense, the cheap kind burned at funerals. She followed the smell down the hallway. It grew stronger, more pungent, until she reached an office at the end of the corridor. The door was closed, but light shone beneath it. Orange flickering, candlelight. Chen Mei knew she shouldn't open it. Every instinct screamed at her to turn around, to run, but her hand moved anyway, reaching for the handle. The door swung open. Inside, the office was empty except for one thing: a makeshift altar, and on it, 7 funeral portraits. She recognized every face. Old Man Li's wife, Li Wei, little Li Ming. Old Man Li himself, her brother-in-law. And 2 she'd never seen photographed this way. A sister-in-law who disappeared, and there at the end of the row, her own husband's face. Chen Mei's legs gave out. She collapsed to her knees, staring at that photograph. Her husband, her living husband, already memorialized. Already dead. She scrambled to her feet and ran out of the office. Down the stairs, 3 flights, taking them 2 at a time. Her breath ragged, heart pounding. She burst out onto the street. The night air hit her like cold water. She ran all the way home, not stopping, not looking back. When she reached their apartment, her husband was still awake, waiting for her. "You're early," he said, checking his watch. Chen Mei grabbed him, held him tight, felt his heartbeat, real, warm, alive. "We have to leave," she whispered. "Tonight." right now. But where could they go? How far was far enough? They'd already run 3 counties, and still, the dead had found them. Her husband, to his credit, didn't argue. He'd seen the terror in her eyes before, and he'd learned to trust it. They packed again, 3rd time in 6 months. This time, they decided to go south, as far south as they could afford. Different climate, different dialect, different ghosts, maybe. They took a train for 18 hours. Chen Mei didn't sleep. She watched the landscape change outside the window. Northern plains became southern hills. Dry became humid, but as they traveled, something strange happened. Other passengers would sit near them, then suddenly move, as if they'd felt something wrong. An old woman with a basket of oranges sat across from them. She took one look at Chen Mei and crossed herself a Christian gesture, rare in rural China. Then she moved 3 cars down. A young mother sat down with her baby. The infant immediately began screaming, wouldn't stop until they moved away. The mother glanced at Chen Mei with something like pity. Because babies. You see, babies can see things adults cannot. In Chinese belief, children under 3 years old still have their tianyan, heaven's eye open. They see ghosts as clearly as they see people. By the time they reached their destination, a coastal city in Guangdong, they were sitting alone in their car. Everyone had moved away. Her husband noticed. Why did they all leave? He asked quietly, but Chen Mei didn't answer because she knew they could smell it on her, death, following her like a shadow. They found a room in a boarding house near the docks. The landlady was a hard woman, more interested in money than questions. Good. The room was small. One window overlooking an alley, a single bed, a basin for washing, nothing else. But it was far from that house. Far from the portraits, far from the dead. Chen Mei's husband found work on the docks, loading ships, back-breaking labor, but it paid. Chen Mei took in sewing, mending fishermen's nets. Her fingers bled from the rough rope. Days passed. Weeks. The tropical heat was oppressive, different from northern cold, but Chen Mei welcomed it. Heat meant life, cold meant death, but at night, she still heard them. The footsteps, slower now, more deliberate, as if walking through water, as if walking through space itself to find her. One night, her husband didn't come home. Chen Mei waited. Midnight, 1 a.m., 2 a.m., still no sign. At 3 a.m., the ghost hour, when yin energy is strongest, she heard a knock at the door. Chen Mei froze. In Chinese superstition, you never answer a knock at 3 a.m., because it might not be a person knocking, it might be something else. Testing. The knock came again, 3 times, slow, measured, and then a voice. Her husband's voice. Chen Mei opened the door, but something was wrong. The voice was flat, empty, like someone reading words they didn't understand. Chen Mei, the voice repeated. I'm cold. Let me in. The same words, same intonation, like a recording. Chen Mei backed away from the door. There is another rule in Chinese ghost lore. The dead cannot enter without invitation. They need to be welcomed across the threshold. The knocking continued, then scratching, fingernails on wood, not desperate, methodical, patient, as if it had all the time in the world. Chen Mei grabbed a knife from the kitchen. Not to attack, you cannot stab a ghost, but cold iron repels spirits. Another old belief. She held the knife in trembling hands and waited. The scratching stopped. Silence. Then footsteps walking away down the corridor. Chen Mei didn't move until dawn. She sat with her back against the wall, knife in her lap, watching the door, waiting for sunrise. When the sun finally rose, she heard footsteps again, but these were different, heavy, real, and then a key in the lock. Her husband walked in, alive, exhausted, covered in dock grime. Sorry, he said. Emergency shipment. Had to work all night. Chen Mei dropped the knife. It clattered on the floor. She ran to him, touched his face. Warm, real, but if he was working all night, then what had knocked on her door? She didn't tell him. What good would it do? He'd think she was losing her mind. Maybe she was. But that afternoon, the landlady knocked on their door. Real knock, daylight knock. When Chen Mei opened it, the woman's face was pale. "Did you hear it last night?" the landlady asked. The knocking, it went to every door, every single room. Chen Mei's blood ran cold. Every door, it had been looking for her, going room by room. 3 other tenants left this morning, the landlady continued. Said they felt unwelcome. Said something was wrong with this building now. The landlady looked at Chen Mei directly. "I think you should leave too. I don't know what you brought here, but it is not right. It is not natural. You brought here." The words hit Chen Mei like a slap. The landlady was right. She hadn't escaped the curse. She'd carried it with her, like a disease. That night, Chen Mei made a decision. She couldn't keep running. Running only spread the curse. Wherever she went, death followed. Other people felt it. Babies cried. Strangers fled. She had to go back to the source, back to that house. Her husband protested. "We escaped," he said. "We're safe here." But Chen Mei shook her head. "We're not safe. We'll never be safe, not until this ends." "How does it end?" her husband asked quietly. Chen Mei looked at him, memorizing his face, the way his hair fell, the scar on his chin from a childhood accident. "I don't know," she admitted, "but I can't let it take you too. 7 have died. The shaman said the debt requires 8. Her husband grabbed her shoulders. "Then we run again. We keep running until it gives up." But Chen Mei knew better. The dead don't give up. The dead have patience we cannot imagine. They can wait decades, centuries. Time means nothing to them. "I'll go alone," Chen Mei said. "You stay here, build a new life. Forget about me." But her husband refused. "Wherever you go, I go. We're married. We face this together." In Chinese marriage tradition, husband and wife are Tongming Yuanyan, Mandarin ducks sharing one fate. Where one goes, the other must follow, even into death. So they traveled north together, retracing their steps. Train, then bus, then foot, back through the changing landscape. And as they traveled, Chen Mei noticed something. The farther north they went, the easier she could breathe. As if the curse recognized she was coming home. The footsteps at night stopped. The scratching ceased. Even the smell of funeral incense disappeared. The ghosts were waiting, welcoming her back. They arrived at the village on the 7th day of the 7th month Qixi, the ghost festival, when the gates between worlds are thinnest. The village was quieter than Chen Mei remembered. Fewer people. Those who remained watched them pass with hollow eyes. Everyone knew about the lighthouse. The house stood at the end of the main road, unchanged, waiting. White funeral banners still hung from the doorway, faded now by sun and rain. Chen Mei and her husband stood before the gate. The red paint had peeled away almost completely. The wood underneath was gray. "Dead, are you sure?" her husband asked one last time. Chen Mei nodded. She pushed the gate open. It made no sound, as if it had been oiled, as if it had been expecting them. They stepped inside. The courtyard was overgrown with weeds. The well in the center had been covered with boards, probably after they found the brother-in-law's body there. Front door stood ajar. Chen Mei could see darkness inside. Not the darkness of night, thicker, more solid. A darkness that absorbed light. They entered together. The main room was exactly as Chen Mei remembered, except empty air, as if everything unnecessary had been removed. Only the altar remained, and on it, 7 portraits. Chen Mei's family, her dead family, all watching her with their photographed eyes. The candles were lit, fresh, as if someone had just placed them there. Chen Mei approached the altar slowly, and there at the end of the row was space, room for one more portrait. She knew whose portrait belonged there. She'd always known. Her husband put his hand on her shoulder. "We should go," he whispered. This was a mistake, but it was already too late, my friends. You see, there are thresholds we cross without realizing, and once crossed, there is no going back. The house had claimed them the moment they stepped inside. Chen Mei turned to look at the door they'd entered through. It was closed now. She didn't remember hearing it close. Her husband hadn't closed it. Her husband walked to the door and pulled. It didn't move. He pulled harder, putting his weight into it. Nothing, as if it had been sealed from the outside. The windows, Chen Mei said. They moved to the nearest window. The shutters were closed. When her husband tried to open them, they wouldn't budge, nailed shut from the inside. But they hadn't been nailed when they arrived. Chen Mei was certain. She'd seen daylight through the cracks. Now nothing. Complete darkness outside. The temperature dropped. Their breath began to mist in the air. In summer, in the middle of the day. And then they heard it. Footsteps, upstairs, slow, methodical, walking from room to room. One set of footsteps became two, then three, then more. A procession walking through the upper floor. 7 sets of footsteps, 7 dead family members. Chen Mei's husband grabbed her hand. His palm was ice cold, or was that her own hand? She couldn't tell anymore. The footsteps stopped. Complete silence, then the sound of something being dragged, heavy across the floor above their heads. The dragging sound moved toward the stairs, slowly, deliberately. Whatever it was coming down. Chen Mei wanted to run, but there was nowhere to go. Every door sealed, every window nailed. They were trapped like animals waiting for slaughter. Then she remembered something the shaman had said. Sometimes an empty house satisfies them. But what if it wasn't about the house being empty of people? What if it was about emptying yourself, letting go, accepting, inviting them in instead of fighting them out? Chen Mei walked toward the altar. Her husband tried to pull her back, but she shook him off gently. "I understand now," she whispered. She knelt before the 7 portraits. Her family, dead but not gone, hungry but not evil, just waiting. "I'm sorry," she said aloud. "We disrespected you. We cut corners. We didn't honor you properly." The dragging sound on the stairs stopped, as if whatever it was had paused, listening. "We were afraid," Chen Mei continued. "We ran, but running was wrong. You needed us to stay, to remember, to honor you." In Chinese belief, the worst fate for the dead is to be forgotten. No offerings, no incense, no one speaking their names. That is true death, absolute erasure. "I will stay," Chen Mei said. "I will remember you. I will burn incense every day. I will speak your names. I will feed you." The cold in the room intensified. Frost formed on the walls. The candle flames bent horizontal, as if a wind was blowing. But there was no wind. Then, one by one, the portraits began to change, not physically, but the feeling from them. The malevolence faded, replaced by something else. Sadness, loneliness. Chen Mei understood. They weren't angry. They were lonely, abandoned, left to starve not for food, but for memory, for acknowledgement. "But my husband," Chen Mei said, looking back at him, "he must leave. He wasn't part of the original debt. Let him go." The cold receded slightly. The candle flame straightened, and the front door, impossible, inexplicable, clicked open. Just a crack. "Go," Chen Mei said to her husband. "Live, forget about me. Forget about this place." But her husband shook his head. 同命鸳鸯, he said quietly. Remember, we share one fate. He walked to the altar and knelt beside his wife. If she stays, I stay. We'll honor you together. The open door clicked shut again, but this time it didn't feel like a trap. It felt like acceptance. Agreement. The debt had changed. The temperature returned to normal. The darkness outside the windows lightened to gray daylight. The oppressive weight in the air lifted. Chen Mei and her husband stayed in that house. They cleaned it, repaired it, made it livable again. Every morning, Chen Mei burned incense before the 7 portraits. She placed fresh food offerings, rice, fruit, tea. She spoke to them, told them about her day. And every night, she heard footsteps in the courtyard, but they no longer frightened her. They were just walking, pacing, the restless dead, not malevolent, just present. Her husband worked the fields that had belonged to his family. The land was still good, still fertile. They grew vegetables, kept chickens, lived simply. The villagers avoided them, called them cursed, said they lived with ghosts, and they were right. But Chen Mei didn't mind. The living had abandoned them. The dead had accepted them. Months passed, then years. Chen Mei's hair began to gray. Her husband's back bent from labor. They aged in that house with their dead family watching over them. And strange thing, they never got sick, never suffered injury, as if the dead, satisfied with their devotion, protected them in return. Chen Mei knew it wouldn't last forever. One day she would die, and when she did, her portrait would join the others on that altar. 8 portraits. The debt finally paid. The curse finally complete. And perhaps she thought sometimes, when burning the morning incense, perhaps that wasn't so terrible. To be remembered, to be honored, to never be forgotten. Isn't that all any of us want? To matter, to be missed, to leave something behind more permanent than footprints in dust. The villagers say that house still stands. My friends Chen Mei and her husband lived there until they were very old. Some say they're still there. Others say they finally joined the portraits on that altar. But on certain nights, particularly during Ghost Festival, people walking past report hearing sounds. Footsteps in the courtyard, the murmur of voices, laughter, even. Not the sounds of haunting, but the sounds of family gathered together, the living and the dead sharing one table. Perhaps that is the real lesson here. Horror isn't always about fear. Sometimes it is about obligation, about duty, about honoring the bonds that death cannot break. In the West, you bury your dead and move on. But in the East, we understand. The dead are never truly gone. They remain, always watching, always hungry, always waiting to be remembered. So tell me, my friends, when you die, who will remember you? Who will speak your name? Who will burn incense in your honor? These questions haunt us all, living or dead. This has been Netherwave Radio. I am Damian Tao. Until next time, remember the dead before they remember you.